Thank you for standing by, and welcome to the Minden Dialogue Technical Subcommittee conference call. All lines have been placed on mute to prevent any background noise. After the speaker's remarks, there will be a question-and-answer session. If you would like to ask a question during this time, please press star, then the number 1 on your telephone keypad. If you would like to withdraw your question, press the pound key. Thank you. David Gray, you may begin your conference.
Thank you, Operator. We sure appreciate it. And with that, let me turn it over to Doug. Doug?
Yeah, thanks, David. And so this is Doug Sarno, and I just kind of want to quickly orient us to what we want to do today. We have a lot of topics and subtopics to discuss, and that's why I sort of prepared a fairly detailed agenda, which will help us orient and walk us through a lot of the issues that are going on. There's a great deal of information that we need to plow through over the coming weeks, and we're still compiling and trying to get it all together. There's a lot of wheels in motion, and what we want to do first is sort of orient everybody to where are we, what's happening, what's the steps involved in this process, and then begin to look at the tool and approaches we're going to use to do this evaluation and where we are at the moment. So with that, I'm going to suggest that I stop at key points when we're talking about specific issues for conversation and input. Chances are things that you want to discuss we're going to get to at some point during this, and if you scan forward in the agenda, you'll see lots of different topics. So if possible, I would just ask that you hold your particular questions or issues till we get to that place in the agenda so that we can move quickly through the process piece and have more time as we get later on and we look at the framework that we're trying to put together for the work group to use in evaluating technologies, and we talk about sort of the substantive process issues around getting technical experts and technical information and the things we need to make sure that we have the robust set of technologies and information to move forward. I kind of want to start with just a reiteration of where we are in the overall work group.
This is Christy. Before you do that, can you see if we have other folks on the phone that want to introduce themselves on the webinar?
I'm sorry. If you are on the phone but not online, those of you who are online, we see your names. So anyone who's on the phone but not whose name does not appear online, if you could just say hello and let us know you're there.
Hello, this is
Wilma, we heard Wilma Suber.
Dolores Blaylock.
Mickey Walsh.
Adam Coleman. And I'm trying to get online, but I'm having a little trouble.
All right.
And Doug, it might make sense to quickly read who's online just because so for folks to know.
Sure. So the folks that we have on the system right now include Annetta Garner, Diana Dugas, Brian Salvatore, Francis, John Barr, Jonathan, I'm not sure. Jonathan, what's your last name? I probably should know.
He may be a member of the public.
Okay. Karen Price, Rick Broussard, Ron Hagar, Ron Stuckey, Sam Mims, and I'm going to massacre your name, Lumnicki.
Good enough.
Did I miss anyone? Did we miss anyone who's on the phone? Okay, so we sent out the announcement to the whole dialogue committee, and I know there's some members of the public either listening in or also watching online. I just ask that if you're not on the technical work group, you mute your line so that we give first chance to the technical work group to participate in the conversation, and then we will have some time toward the end of the call for other folks who have comments or questions. Christy, any other just logistical details we need to cover?
Nope. We hope to have time at the end for public comment if time is available.
Right. So part of what I want to make sure we're just all on the same page about the focus of the dialogue committee and the technical work group and what we're trying to achieve over the next basically 2.5, 3 weeks. It's a very short period of time. We have a great deal of work to do, and I'm sure that's not lost on anyone. Everybody's a little concerned about, getting there and getting all this done and making sure we have the right information and making sure we're moving fast enough. And Christy and I, conversely, are concerned about moving too quickly so that we're not having a chance to dot the I's, cross the T's, make sure we have what we need, and do, decent process. Regardless, we're going to be done by March 11th. We have to have our work, our analysis, and our collective individual input to the agencies and EPA particularly by March 11th. That's the day we're going to meet as a full dialogue committee in person for a considerable amount of time to basically discuss and hash through the work of this technical committee, moving us in that direction. And so we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the status of that as we move forward. The main thing I want to focus us on is we're trying to identify the key technology or set of technologies that make the most sense to try to address the M6 and CBI at Camp Minden. And so we're trying to make sure that we, first of all, identify the right set of technologies, and we gather the right set of information about each technology, and we do thoughtful and balanced analysis so that we can have, a robust discussion and outputs from that analysis. So what we've done, this was preliminary put into the email that Christy sent out yesterday, and I've kind of refined it here a little bit for the purposes of the technical work group, the steps we're going through as a technical work group to get there, right? And the first and foremost, and we began this conversation in our first meeting, first call last week, is to identify what is that set of technologies that we are looking at. We want to make sure we're looking at the full set of available technologies that can potentially address the challenge at Camp Minden, but by necessity, we're trying to start with a list that's basically ready to go, that's been tested, that's been approved. We can't go with anything that's experimental or needs development or anything like that because there simply isn't that kind of time. So we're looking for technologies that exist and technologies that are most likely to be able to handle this material, and that has pointed us to the various lists that come out of the Army ESB. And at our 212 meeting, a couple of technologies, about a half a dozen technologies, were identified. We've put those on our list. We're still trying to clarify exactly what lists they're on from ESB, but we're pretty confident they're on some list or multiple lists, and it's a good starting point. We also, since that time, we received a list of ESB-approved systems, ammunition, and explosives, and that was shared with you in Christie's email yesterday. There are about 10 items on that list. Those are also on our list, and we'll see those a little later this morning in the table, that those are technologies that seem likely to, at least most of them, apply to the M6 materials that we're dealing with. In addition to those two lists that we already have, we've asked the ESB, EPA has asked the ESB to provide us with a list specifically for M6 that they have evaluated and have available for M6. We have reason to believe that is going to be made available, and we may see that soon, and we hope so. If we get that list and it's different from the lists that we have, we'll compare the two, decide what makes the most sense, and use some combination of all three in using our understanding to move forward with with the list of technologies. We also decided on the call on last week, the full dialogue call, that OpenBurn will move forward for comparison purposes only. Right? We're not putting it on the list as an alternative to itself. That we're looking for alternatives, but we want to compare it to OpenBurn just so that we have a robust process. So somehow that will also happen as we move forward, and it'll probably parallel on the tables as we move forward. It's important to understand while we're using the ESB lists actually under CERCLA, it's not absolutely required that it be a certified technology under ESB. ESB approval would be considered as an ARAR, which we brought up in the last meeting, on applicable or relevant and appropriate regulation. The Superfund law looks at things slightly differently. We won't go into all the details, but they basically look at all the various state and federal regulations and decide which and how they most apply. And our goal is to have this list comfortably finalized by our call 2 days from now, which is Wednesday. So that's the status of where we are with the various lists and how we're approaching that. And the input you guys have already made, and our update with our contacts with various agencies. So I'm going to stop after each one of these kind of points and ask if there are any questions or clarifications. Any agency folks, if I get anything wrong or new stuff has happened, please clarify. Any questions or clarifications about how we're building the list of technologies?
This is Sam. Sounds good to me.
Thank you, Sam. That was Sam Coleman, EPA. We got two Sams on the line. That's good. So that's where we are, and I see no hands, so I'll move to number 2. Right? I'm kind of going through. Here's our steps. Here's how we're going to do this. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take that list, and we're going to try to give everyone basic understanding of some key information about each of those, and we're actually going to start this conversation today when we get to the table. So we have a draft template that we're going to look at here in a hopefully soon, and then we have asked EPA. So EPA, and I'll get into this a little more detail. EPA is putting together a group of technical folks, both from the region and from around the country, that are available to this process, and we've asked the other agencies as well to help us complete this initial template by also by the Wednesday meeting. So we have this kind of robust summary of information that we can look at and begin all of us understanding the universe and the characteristics of that universe of technologies. Any questions on that? All right, moving on. So then with that knowledge, with that sort of template saying here's all the technologies, here's the basic characteristics of all those technologies, we can start looking at those and do what we're talking about as kind of an initial screening. Basically, it is more than likely that some of these technologies simply aren't going to work at Camp Minden for one of several key reasons. And at our call last week, we talked about the kinds of go, no-go factors that we might use in this initial screening. And that includes basically, will it work with M6 and CBI that we have here at the camp? Is it actually available in a time frame that we need it in? Does it have the capacity and the throughput necessary to do this very large volume of material in a reasonable period of time? And we'll have some more discussion about what that reasonable period of time might be, and how we in the next 3 weeks can think about that time frame. Are there any particular risks either to workers and or the community that might make that a riskier than other technologies or unacceptable for whatever reason? And also the ability to capture, control, test, monitor emissions will be critical to a technology that's going to work. So we hope to have this initial screen. Again, we'll have the table in its first format, filled out by Wednesday, and really start that thought process for us on Wednesday. Any questions on that? And this is basically what we're gonna look at is any real obvious things that would rule out any technologies. Once we do that, then we move on and we have now a shorter set of technologies that we want to do a very detailed assessment with. As I said, EPA's put together a technical team. The states at the table, the guards at the table, any experts that they have are going to be involved in this process. And the good news is that between the time that I emailed this morning that says we have some reason to believe the Army will also begin to support this process as early as today, it was as early as today. They are now on board. So that is good news. The Army is going to engage with us. We hope that they will certainly be on the call with us on Wednesday. They certainly will be helping us prepare these materials, providing information, and helping us move forward. There's also been some discussion about whether and how we might want to reach out directly to vendors in some sort of uniform way. The only challenge that we want to make sure is that we do try to get good information across the board. This is not a procurement process. We don't want to favor any vendor over another, and it's going to be difficult to get a uniform response from the vendors and or get the same kind of detail and level of information. But we can talk about that, and we can talk about how to do that in time, and how to do that in the fairest and most effective way possible. So as we pull all this detailed information together, we will think about how to array this information. We won't get it all at once. And so this is the challenge we have right now with this process. We're giving information to you as soon as we're able to get it. And so that means that it's not always complete. We don't always have all the information for everything at the same time, but we just have to keep moving. So over the course of the 2 weeks that we're going to be looking at this stuff, we will present the detailed information as we get it. We'll talk about some technologies on a call, and then we'll talk about other technologies on the next call. You know, the goal is by the end of this 2-week period, we'll have gathered all this information, and we'll have a robust summary for each of the technologies that we've moved to this final list. So the schedule right now is what it is. We have another 4 or 5 calls in which to do this. By the time that we get to our call on the 9th of March, which is 2 days before the in-person meeting on the 11th, we'll hope to have had the detailed presentation information on all the technologies that we're going to have in our analysis. So this is the big chunk of time. Then number 5 is actually conducting the detailed analysis. It's comparing one against the other and trying to understand how that all works, so that we have the ability to bring this forward on the 11th. So I'm going to stop there, and I'm sure there are some questions, comments, and input to kind of that big chunk of work, which is a lot of work over a very short period of time. Thoughts and questions? Francis.
Yes. The experts that are coming from the Army, are we going to have anyone from the Aqua program?
I have not seen those names yet. If EPA has more detail, then I'll let them answer that.
No, this is Sam Coleman. The persons that the Army has designated are individuals who are specifically working on munitions disposal issues, and they have actually been working on this exact project on behalf of the Army in the past.
This exact project, you mean they've been involved in Camp Minden?
That's correct.
That's correct. Okay.
Okay. Thank you. I think that I would like to still ask that we have one of the Aqua program managers be asked to be available. I am concerned, I did raise this concern with Christy and Doug, that the technical experts from the EPA seem to be experts on open burn, open detonation, on incineration, and it just seems like it would be fair that we would have experts on the advanced treatment technologies providing the advice and the expertise to describe those technologies and help us have the information to evaluate those technologies. I'm not trying to be difficult about it, but I mean that's what we want. And we obviously have our scientists doing the best that we can, but we really do need the experts about the technologies that are the ones that we actually want.
So my understanding is that we will be getting that level of support from the Army. I think those specific conversations have been happening. Is that correct, EPA?
That is correct, and the individuals that we are working with are familiar, and I think we'll be able to answer and respond to whatever questions, either by looking at other individuals that they have access to or through their own knowledge and expertise.
I mean, y'all appreciate that, the citizens in the community is really at a disadvantage here, and that we don't have time for, the task or the TAG grants to be able to hire our own experts, and we are lucky to have scientists from the community. But all of the experts are coming from the EPA and the Army, and we're having to trust y'all on that, and we're having to, obviously look at the science they present, and so it just, I'm just going to keep pushing on this, and I'm not trying to be mean or anything. As you were able to bring the people forward and give us the background information like you did for the other two, that'll help us know, if we are comfortable with these experts as being able to talk about the technologies that we are most interested in and want to be discussing. This is a difficult problem, and I appreciate everything that everyone's doing to try to get us the right experts. I'm just probably going to keep asking difficult questions, and I apologize for that.
No need to apologize. We all, this is the purpose of trying to move through this process together, is that we all are comfortable with the information we're using, and that's the challenge with moving so quickly. Is we can only do our best to get as much information as possible in the short period of time. But I believe we are moving well into the process of being able to access the information that exists out there, and that's the best we can do.
So, Francis, this is Christy. I would suggest you as soon as we know the military folks that are going to be involved and who's going to take the lead, we'll talk to them and make sure that they have access to the full range of staff regarding the various technologies that are under consideration.
Yes, and y'all will provide us the names of everyone that's being consulted to us?
Yep.
Like we did before?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, and again, we've sent out a few CVs, but there are a lot more people that will be working, and we'll be collecting all that information as soon as we can. Sam Mims, your hand's up.
Yes, I think my question may have been partially answered. I was going to ask, when would we have access to the names and phone numbers of these Army experts?
We hope to share a list shortly. I can't speak for them as to how much of their contact information they're going to share, how broadly, but we certainly will get their names and information, I hope, today. This final conversation only happened this morning with the regional administrator of EPA and his commensurate folks at the Army. So hopefully we'll see it real soon.
Thanks.
Any other questions or clarifications about just the process and the path and speed of the path we're on? Okay. So
this is Francis. I have more to say. I'm sorry.
I would expect nothing less, Francis. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
I was just going to let other people have a chance to talk, so I wasn't the only one talking.
Yeah. No.
Okay. I really appreciate having this sort of outline of how it looks going forward and what the expectation is for getting things by different dates. And I appreciate that, when we reach out to the vendors, especially as a working group or as a dialogue committee, we have to be careful to do so in a uniform way. Our group has been talking about the importance of having an industrial day and about having in-person presentations from the different companies, since they are sort of experts. I mean, obviously they're trying to sell us their technology, but they're also experts on their technology, and we can ask specific scientific questions to them. And I think that, it would be really helpful if that could be a date that's on the calendar, and even if we can't officially reach out to the technologies until we know which technologies we're reaching out to, we can sort of publicly say that this is happening, and that can give them at least an informal heads up that is happening if it is publicly coming out of this working group, that there will be an industrial day and that this is the date.
From a process standpoint, if we can pull it off, we would certainly do whatever we could to support it. We'll have to defer to the agencies and who's willing to sort of help host something like that and pull something like that together, and could we do it within this time frame? Any thoughts from the agencies on that? I think the best idea here is it's something that's definitely worth discussing, because Christy and I haven't had a chance to talk about that with any of the agencies, and the Army's just coming on board. Why don't we bring it back up on Wednesday and just give us a chance to talk with folks about the feasibility of pulling that off in the time frame and how we would do that.
This is Brian Salvatore.
Yes, Brian.
Yes, I want to raise a concern that I have about the fact that the Army is just coming on board now, and it sounds like we're going to give them a lot of leeway in getting up to speed here. Well, I can understand that they're going to be somewhat in the dark because they willingly did not take part in these discussions. However, when they come into these meetings, they are regarded as the experts. We're not going to give them days and weeks to say, well, we're just gathering information. They're expected to come to these meetings with experts, with the know-how, and they're not going to bluff any of us that they do not have this technical expertise. Okay, we all know that they do. And we have been asking now for weeks for explosive experts. The only people that we were able to speak with are people who are consultants to companies. Those are not disinterested parties. They're very competent people, but they are not the sorts of experts that we are wanting. And so the Army is not just going to come in as an interested observer. They're going to come in as an active participant.
That is certainly our hope, yes.
Okay.
I mean, I just, I cannot speak for them. And as I said, this deal to get them on board was only reached this morning. I don't have any details.
Doug, this is Bob Flanoy, online.
Yes, go ahead, Bob.
I came up with this idea that the vendors that we know are out there and they're interested in this process and helping us solve the problem, the disposal of M6, bringing those folks in, I reiterated what Francis is saying. We need to look at those people in the eye and get knowledge about what their methodologies are and how much experience they've had with these technologies, and we can look them in the face and ask them these questions and time frame, cost, etc., confidentiality of everything. But I think it's well if we would consider bringing these vendors in at their expense, of course, and presenting their approach to for the method to dispose of the M6. So I keep coming back to that. I've been on both ends. I've been listening to people come in. I've given presentations, and I think it speaks well for the vendors because they like a chance to really impress, and it's hard to do that if they send in a packaged bid that we look at on paper. And so I think we really need to strongly consider that because this is a very serious situation with 18 million pounds of explosives. We need to be sure that the party that gets the bid is well tuned and well experienced. So that's my take on it.
I hear you, and I hear Francis, and I'm thinking that this is something we have to discuss, and give me the 2 days to come back to you on Wednesday, having had conversations with the various agencies and see how and if that could be pulled off.
This is Carl.
Okay.
Can y'all hear me?
Go ahead.
Just a quick comment. I guess I'm concerned, and I'm not a contracting person, but I'm curious to why the committee needs to know who is doing what, and why are we more focused on the method? And the method will then drive who will be the ultimate selectee. There could be a number. Once we select a method, there could be several contractors who can do that method. And I don't think we should be zeroing in on a contractor and what he can do. But that's just my thoughts.
I think that is all.
Yeah.
Also,
we wouldn't be looking at just one contractor. We'd be bringing in several vendors that have different expertise. And we might get to the point that we say, okay, this is our number one option for disposal, and it doesn't pan out. So we need to look at a second to have a backup, and that's my thought. So we need to know what all these companies can do as far as the technologies.
And here again, I don't think we can have a full conversation on this. Given that the Army has just come on board, we need a chance to talk to their experts. And also, I mean, the Colonel's right is that some of these technologies could be delivered by more than one vendor. Others of them cannot. They are actually proprietary. So this is the challenge of how do we actually create something that's the most useful for the dialogue committee and the most fair moving forward in terms of the procurement process. We want to make sure that we don't get sideways on being able to do a fair and open procurement. I'm not a procurement expert, but there are always challenges when procurement's involved. And so, again, let me just leave it at, we hear you. Let's see, give us 2 days to figure out and talk to the agencies if this can be done as part of the dialogue process in a legal, fair, and reasonable manner within the time frame we have, and we'll have an answer for you on that on Wednesday. Francis?
I think it's even bigger problem because...
hold on. Who's speaking, please?
This is Slavo Lomnicki, sorry.
Go ahead, Slavo.
I think we'll probably at the end have to choose more than one method because one of the vendor and one method only will not be able to handle the volume.
That is very likely true. We'll figure that out as we go. Yes. Francis?
Yes. So to answer the Colonel's question, I do think that we are really concerned about setting it up in a way that we don't mess up the procurement process by doing something that causes the committee or the working group to be favoring, one company over another in a way that is or at least looks improper, and could set us up to be challenged. And I really do appreciate that. My concern about why we need to be both looking at the methods and looking at the companies at the same time is that we have this time crunch, and if a method would actually work here but the equipment is not available, then it's not a method that we can consider, right? If their equipment is under contract somewhere else and they literally cannot get it here, then we can't use it, and that's unfortunate. And so I think that as we're evaluating it, part of the criteria is about implementability, and that is not just about if this equipment was free, could it come here, but is that equipment actually free to come here, or is that company actually interested in coming here? Because in our research, at least one company was not interested in doing it, and so even if their equipment would work, if they won't come, they're not an option that we have, and that's sort of the unfortunate reality that we have to live with, is that we don't want to we want to know what are the options that are actually on the table. Does that help?
Yes, I agree wholeheartedly in that, and we're actually going to get into that specific conversation in a moment. But we don't have to bring all the vendors to one day to do that. I'm not suggesting that we will not be reaching out to vendors, specifically vendors of proprietary technology, to ask those exact questions if we don't have that information. I mean, that kind of information is going to be critical to our analysis. So that, but one, that not having them all come doesn't change our ability to work hard to get the answers to the key questions that we have to ask. Colonel Stuckey?
Yeah, just a quick comment regarding Francis' concern, because I think a majority of the committee's concerns and questions that Francis just brought up could be answered by sending these contractors that short list of evaluation criteria that we've drafted up. And if those contractors can't at least meet that short list, then we shouldn't even be talking to them. It's just my thoughts.
Yeah, I think something along those lines is almost certainly going to have to happen. We're going to reach out to these folks sooner rather than later. So, any other thoughts around that? We hear you. We understand. We know the needs. Give us till Wednesday to help figure this out.
Sounds good.
Any other comments there? Francis, any other issues? Your hand's still up.
I'll take it down for now.
Okay. All right. So then, thank you for your patience with that. And again, with moving so fast, it's really important that we kind of all understand how we're working and how we're moving and what's going to happen. And we'll do our best to keep you oriented as we move through this. Everything we're doing is fluid, and we'll be working as hard as we can. We're going to almost 99% certain keep the exact dates we have on the calendar, because they're on the calendar. That's important. What we exactly do at each meeting will fluctuate based on things happen, things we learn, things we don't get answers to in time for meeting A, and it has to be deferred to meeting B. So we all just need to be patient with the process to move as quickly as we possibly can and get the answers to you on your questions as fast as we possibly can. So we talked about this idea of needing to screen technologies, needing to have sort of a set of quick criteria that we look at to help us understand why we won't do a detailed analysis if the technology clearly is not available or many other needs. And so some of the things that have come up, and just to orient us, I've started a list of some key considerations. These are what are now being built into our framework, which we're going to talk about in a second. But it also helps orient us to things that we can deal with in the focus group and things that we might not be able to deal with the focus group, but will be dealt with either later or differently so that the dialogue committee can focus on its work and be as clear as possible. So there's a couple things here. Again, we'll let me move through these. I'll stop in some places where obvious questions are going to come up. First, we have to look at the applicability of these technologies to M6 and CBI here at Camp Minden. A lot of the technologies that are on the list were developed for specific things, some of them that are similar to the propellants we have on site and probably are applicable, others that may not be applicable. So we have to really just do that first screen to understand, would this work? Is this something that makes sense for the materials we have here? Almost all of them could be made to work, and we'll have to look at them and understand. The second is about location. So some of these technologies are, in my understanding, physically located at other places. They're built facilities, and so ESB approves systems that are in place at facilities. Others are things you can move and bring to Camp Minden. Right now, we're looking at systems that need to be brought to and installed and operated at Camp Minden. So that's a real constraint on the analysis we'll be doing, and we'll have to look at the technologies with that in mind. If you look at the various technical assessment visits that's happened over the last couple of years, right now it appears that the DDESB is saying that the M6 and CBI are not stable enough to transport in their current condition, and so actual primary treatment would have to happen at Camp Minden. Any off-site transport would also require permitting and approval by Department of Transportation, and that would be a whole other process, even if we could get it off-site. So all those things are probably pointing us to an on-site treatment system. Let me stop there and make sure I haven't said anything that's not factually correct.
Yes, Doug, this is Brian Salvatore. So what I understand is when the material was sitting out there under the pine trees in the fields due to the criminal negligence of the contractor, that the Army was interested at that time and did come in, and another contractor was hired, and about 3 million pounds of this explosive material would not fit in the 97 bunkers that were there after the explosion. And so this material was transported off-site because it was assigned through bankruptcy process to contractors. It couldn't be pinned on the state of Louisiana. It belonged to contractors. So technology is blind to the party. If this material could have been moved off by government contractors, it could be moved off by the Army themselves or by any contractor that we can identify at this time underwater in the special coffins, as they call them. They can transport it. So I am saying that what you said does not jive with what I understand.
So let me I appreciate that. So let me defer this to any agency folks who can give us clarity on this.
Yeah, it's Colonel Stuckey. Just to put the sequence of events correctly, when the material was discovered improperly stored, the state police, providing oversight to Explo, relocated the material from improper storage on S-line to proper storage. At that same time, Explo still had explosive license, and for whatever reason, they were allowed to continue shipping this product to their customer. ESB came in after the fact and did their assessment. And I think that's what happened. Whether it was right or wrong, that's exactly what happened.
But some material was transported off-site.
That's correct. Nothing had been transported off-site since the ESB first visit in I think it was April 2013.
Right, but if the material was transported off-site that time, and no stability testing has been done since then, wouldn't the most logical and safest approach to the people who actually have to get there, the most logical approach would be to conduct the necessary stability testing, bunker by bunker, and then find the Occam's razor approach, which is the simplest, most direct approach, to render that material non-explosive. We're not talking about whole munitions here. We're talking about chemical pellets.
So now that we have an open line to the ESB, hopefully we can get some clarity around this. I do know that we're waiting for a December 2014 report from their visit, in December 2014 report on that visit, and that might shed some additional light on this as well.
Okay, good.
Just so everybody's clear, right now, the ESB recommendation is that this stuff should not be transferred, should not be transported, that it's not safe to transport. The fact that it was transported before the ESB came to the site is just a, it is what it is. But ESB is now transport not happen.
If it can be placed in a burn tray, if it can be placed in anything, it can be placed underwater in a coffin. And the whole difference there is when it's placed underwater, it is not going to have the explosive risk that it would have otherwise. And that's something that I think a lot of people are, for some reason, ignoring, that it can be moved on site. Obviously, we are all acknowledging that. We're not just going to go up to those bunkers and set them off one by one. It is going to have to be touched. It is going to have to be moved. I'm talking about the bundles. And so it's how we move it. The sensible action that we take is what's going to make all the difference here. And it will make an economic difference. It will make a safety difference. It will make a difference in how the community perceives the very ethics here and credibility of all these agencies.
I don't disagree. The ability to transport is a major issue, which is why I put this on here. What this reflects is our current understanding from ESB. So you're raising a bunch of questions that need to be asked.
Okay.
Francis.
Okay. So it's my understanding also that there was that 3 million pounds of other explosives, not 3 million pounds of M6 that was moved to Arkansas before ESB came, but there's 3 million pounds that belong to other companies, and it was under a separate AOC that there are private companies that have moved off-site. And my question is, how did they move it? Did they put it underwater, or did they have, other licenses? Because I know that I understand that most of that stuff, the extra 3 million pounds of other assorted chemicals, has been moved off. Is that not right?
I think that's a question for EPA. They're providing oversight.
This is Sam Coleman. There are actually 3 administrative orders on consent to responsible parties to dispose of a variety of materials that we do have listed on our website, and that has some up-to-date information regarding that. And if there are more specific questions, I think I can try and answer those. But there are separate administrative orders to different responsible parties to remove other material.
So let me try to simplify this if we can, because what we really want to do is focus our energies on the M6 and the CBI. It's clear we don't have a clear understanding, and we need a clear understanding of, can this material or a portion of this material be safely moved off-site for treatment? Because that changes the options. It changes the range of options. And that's just a question we need as good an answer to as we can get in the coming days. Is that a fair statement to folks? That if we can get the best answer we can get to that question, does that sort of address all this conversation? Or let me say, does anybody disagree that would address the majority of this conversation?
Well, we need to be absolutely 100% positive that the assessment given by the ESB people are in the interest of science and integrity and not in the interest of facilitating some sort of expedient solution, as I believe has happened in the past. We need to make sure that things are different now.
Having been a facilitator of these processes for 30 years, I would never tell anyone that I was 100% positive of anything. We're going to do our very best to get the very best information, and make sure that we hold our agencies to the robust standards of truth and fairness that we're trying to run this process by. But I do think we all have to accept a certain amount of uncertainty. We're not going to probably find the perfect technology that checks every box, and so we are going to have to deal with the very best we can do, which may not be perfect.
This is Dr. Bob Illinois. A question that Francis was asking about the 3 million pounds, that was TNT, as I understand it, and nobody ever, Colonel Stuckey deferred to the EPA, and nobody's ever mentioned what happened to those 3 million. Are they still on site or are they gone?
EPA, I know there's a lot of activity on site right now to deal with the variety of other materials. Do we have?
This is Sam Coleman. I tried to answer that question, but the real question really is, do we want to get into those explicit details? And I can have somebody give you the details of the administrative orders and the explicit disposition of all of the various types of materials. It was, in fact, more than just TNT. But that information is available for folks to go and look at elsewhere. I just didn't want to spend a lot of time trying to address that here when we had other business.
Okay, so we will provide a link to that information. Any other, recognizing that we're going to do our best as quickly as possible to get answers on the transportability of this stuff. Any other questions around that?
This is Francis.
Yes.
Okay. I appreciate that, Sam. And a lot of us actually have read those reports that are posted on the administrative record about the other materials and the fact that they are being moved off-site and have been moved off-site. I think that if there's any way that we can have the person that's on the ground at Camp Minden for the EPA on these calls to answer sort of the questions like, was that material actually put underwater to be moved off-site? I don't think that information was in the reports as we've read them, and instead of sort of going, back and forth to get the information and come, if that person could be on these calls, that I think we could move the conversation on a little bit quicker, and I would really appreciate if we could make that happen.
All right.
Yeah, I don't think that's a problem. And, again, if there's a specific question, we can get a specific answer. Or if you just want to ask general questions, we can do that as well. It's just there's a lot of information out there, and I didn't want to waste everybody's time going into generalities.
Okay, and we will do whatever we can to make sure that information is available and to summarize some of the key issues. As I understand it, what people most want to know is, has material been moving, and where has it gone, and how is it moving? So those are things we can get a handle on. Number 3 here is capacity. Slavo actually kind of pointed to this, and we've intimated this a little bit as we've gone through this. Ultimately, what's going to be a big factor in the ability to handle this material at Camp Minden is volume. There's a lot of M6 sitting there, and we're trying to do it as quickly as possible. So if you just take the 15 million pounds and you divide it by a year, you're looking at something around 40,000 pounds a day. I'm not throwing that out as a target or anything, just as a point of departure for understanding, right? So if you wanted to do it in half a year, you'd have to double that. If you wanted to do it in 2 years, you'd cut that in half. But you need an operation that can handle kind of capacity in a continuous operation. So some of these technologies are not even in the close to that kind of capacity, and we'd have to look at what makes sense and what doesn't make sense, and how to do that. So capacity is going to be a big deal, and again, that might mean multiple technologies, it might be multiple approaches, but we're going to have to keep that in mind as we move forward, and we're going to be working to get the best, most accurate information we can on the capacity of all the technologies that we're going to look at. The fourth item here, we've been talking about this a little bit, and so this becomes an important piece of the puzzle, and knowledge that everybody wants and is important to folks about the stability of the material that's in place at Camp Minden. It's obviously critical for us in making our decision about what the primary treatment technology is, because it goes to the issue of capacity and how quickly we have to be able to deal with this, and how much time we have to be able to safely handle this material. So the August 2015 date is the one thing we have as sort of a time marker on this, and that came from a 2013 report that said, the degradation of this is going to reach difficult conditions anywhere between 2 and 10 years. I don't have the exact language of what they said, but basically it was at the earliest date in 2 years, at the latest date within 10 years of that report. So that puts it at August 15 to August 2023 as the window of safety or increasing risk. So at the same time, we don't have like a target that says this all has to be completed within 6 months, within 12 months. We're working on the regulatory orders that say how quickly we have to have contracts in place, and that is driving the speed of this. As I mentioned, also, we're looking at hopefully getting an updated report from the DDSB from their December 2014 visit, and that may or may not have additional details that help us understand this as we move forward. Obviously, this is the most important thing to people. The stability of this material, the danger, the risks are critically important. You can't understate how important it is. Some started to talk about the obviously serious safety concerns for on-site workers, both those that are there now and those that will be there as we start to look at and manage the material for treatment. People have identified the issue of, do we need to do this robotically? We brought this up on our last call. It's not something anyone has started to look at yet officially. I do want to suggest that is critically important. However, regardless of what technology we might identify or might ultimately get selected, the handling challenges, the handling risks, the potential need for robotics will be there. I mean, they'll be there regardless of what we choose. And that purely from speed and capacity of our process, that having detailed discussions about robotics right now probably are not in our best interest, because we need to focus on the primary technologies. So I would ask for everybody's patience to say, yes, that needs to be dealt with. Yes, that has to be looked at. And as the procurement and other things move forward, those risks and those hazards are obviously clear and need to be evaluated. I don't see how the dialogue group is going to be able to spend a lot of time on those issues right now. So I know that's controversial. Let me open that up for discussion.
My question, Doug, this is Francis, would be who would then be the group evaluating whether or not robotics were feasible or needed?
Yeah, right. So, and I'm just saying the dialogue committee in the next 3 weeks is not going to get to that topic.
I don't disagree with that. I'm saying who will be the people that will look at that?
I guess that has to be figured out, and conversations can be started around that. I just want to make sure everybody's comfortable that it's not us right now.
So, maybe this is Sam Cole. Maybe this would actually help because, and I will apologize if I keep referring back to some of these documents because I know they are voluminous and they're long and very detailed, but the reason that we have certain things in there is to make sure that these types of issues can be appropriately addressed. So the Louisiana Military Department and whichever contractor they select will prepare a very detailed site safety plan and spill response plan and emergency response plan. All of those plans really are there to assure both the protection of the workers and the protection of the public, to assure that local officials are notified, to assure that there are emergency response procedures in place, and to overall prevent any accidents or incidents that would be considered an anomaly. And so at the point that we have worked through some of the details that we're discussing now, and a contractor is actually selected to perform the work, there will be very detailed plans and discussions that will be held, and that information will be made available to the public. It's just that at this point in time, a lot of the very, very specific details just are not available other than that plans are required. And that's all included in the documents that we've tried to provide to folks up to now.
Additional comments or questions around that issue?
Thank you, Sam.
Doug, this is Dr. Bob Flanoy. I've got a question, and maybe I missed a committee meeting or something on the stability of the material at hand on site as of August 15th. We need to get rid of it. Was that determination made by date the materials were received at Camp Minden, or was it stability testing? Where did that determination of August 2015 come from? I know the board, but how did they arrive at it?
I will defer to others for that. And we may not have the right person on the call to answer that today. Can anyone shed a little light on that? And maybe we need to have the ESB explain that, because that's where I believe it comes from.
Rick, hands up.
No one's more detailed.
Hello?
Rick's hands up. Go ahead, Rick.
Go ahead, Rick.
I understand that the best available information they had in order to determine these dates was from actual shipping tickets. The individual packages were not properly marked by Explo once they got on site, and when the pressure came on to spread the munitions out and separated after they were discovered. They were just jammed into the silos, and the only thing the Army had was the actual tickets to where these packages were shipped into the Camp Minden, and they used those dates off of those tickets to determine what the oldest portion of it was and what the newest portion of it was, and I believe that's how they came up with that date. But they can no longer track those packages down because they're just randomly scattered in all the bunkers. So, but they do know that X amount of pounds of a certain material arrived on a certain date, and it had an age factor assigned to it. And that may not answer your question, but that's all I know about it.
Well, following that up, this is Dr. Flournoy. I think we ought to have somebody doing some stability testing, maybe on some of the material, so we can really find out and get to the bottom of, is it unstable at this point, or can we look maybe a little longer of keeping it on site till we find the technology that we feel will take care of safe removal?
Well, the problem is when they jammed this stuff into the bunkers to begin with, there was no separation process. The orders were to spread it out and change the system that it was stored in, and that's what they did. So if you go in a bunker and it's stacked all the way up to the ceiling with 860-pound bundles of this stuff and there's no dates on them, you might have one that half a dozen of them that aren't even accessible to you that represent the oldest and the most unstable portion of it are the ones that may have been left outside and got water in them. All it's going to take is one of those inside of one of those bunkers to ignite to set the whole bunker off. So if you just open the door and you grab a couple of samples, it's not going to give you what you feel like is a representation of what's in the bunker. And the only real way to do that would be to take every damn thing out of the bunker and test them and put them back in, and I don't know that that's feasible.
So right. So I think we have the best explanation of where that number came from right now from the folks who are on the phone. I don't want to get into a detailed conversation of the stability issue. I think we all understand that the stability issue is critical to understand timing and speed with which we have to work. So hopefully we can get some further clarity around that in the next meeting or two as we now have ESB on board. Brian?
Well, I was going to defer to Colonel Stuckey there because I saw he had his hand up, and I saw that you also just mentioned that we're not going to get into a detailed talk this time about stability testing, so I'm going to reserve my comments in light of the time for a future discussion.
Colonel Stuckey, did you have something to offer?
Yeah, I just want to comment on what Mr. Broussard just mentioned. I don't know Mr. Broussard, but he has explained that situation very well. It's the same information I've heard. I think he did a very good job.
Great. Rick, your hand's back up.
Yeah, just a comment. I have some background noise at my business, and there's several of the participants that if they don't talk into the phone, it's real. I almost have to lay my head on the phone. I hear a lot of people, but some of the Mr. Coleman and Brian, and on occasions, I don't know if they're just far away from their phone, but it's real hard to hear them.
I'm having the same thing. I'm having the same problem. This is Dr. Bob Flournoy. I can't hear him clearly.
Okay, so we please, if someone's speaking and you cannot hear, then chime in then, and we'll ask them to speak up or get closer to their phone.
And guys, part of this is if folks are on cell phones, that makes it tough, and if folks are on speaker phones, it makes it really tough. So in the future, try to avoid those two things if you can, and that'll help everybody.
Or if you're on speaker or on a cell and you have the opportunity to that's fine while you're listening, but if you have the opportunity to pick it up and speak directly into the device when you're actually talking, that will also help.
Right. Okay.
So
Sam,
Hey, Sam.
Is this better? Is this better?
Those who were having trouble hearing Sam, can you hear him now?
Speak.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Testing. Is this better?
Good for me.
It's a little bit better, not a tremendous improvement, but it's better.
Okay, I'll try to make another adjustment.
Okay, I'm seeing some checks, so go ahead, Sam. Just speak loudly. Were you just testing your line, or did you want to offer something?
No, I was just testing the line.
Okay, thank you. All right, moving on. Any other thoughts about that sort of set of issues and the focus for the dialogue committee right now, so we kind of all just are understanding how to move forward. All right, there's one last. It's the primary versus secondary treatment. This came up in our last meeting, and I just want to make sure everybody kind of gets this. So what we're going to talk about here in the next couple of weeks is I've just made this term up, primary treatment versus secondary treatment, which means we're treating the main hazard of the M6 and the CBI, trying to basically eliminate the risks of this auto ignition of the material and any risks of explosion. Regardless of what technology we select and is ultimately implemented, there's going to be material left on site, residue material, that will be at some level inert and not hazardous, but could have the potential for recycling or not, depending on the technology we use, and will have to be disposed of in some way, shape, or form. So there might be recycling, it might just be disposal, it might be reuse. My thought is that between now and March 11th, the Dialogue Committee needs to focus its energy on the actual destruction or whatever treatment technology we're going to use to make this stuff non-hazardous. There will need to be additional conversations and additional focus on what to do with all the residues. As the process moves forward, again, that will be an important discussion. I don't see how we're going to have time to put those technologies on the table, and frankly, you don't really know which ones make sense until you select the primary treatment. So I'm just throwing that out there for understanding and any clarification or questions around that. Yes, Francis.
Hi. I appreciate that and that we need to focus on the primary treatment. I do want to raise a question about this that goes back to the previous concerns that we talked about, like whether or not these methods are actually available. So, and the previous question that we needed answered about whether or not it can be shipped underwater legally. So, with my understanding that if you put it all underwater, it is no longer unstable, and then it could be repurposed by a company that would use it and make it into something else. Okay? But if we do any of the other treatments, then it's no longer able to repurpose into something else. And so we could obviously put it underwater. I don't know how much that would cost, and I don't know how that would affect the legal shipping situation. But there's an economic question about whether or not you do that if there's no end company that's willing to take it. So I understand that we have to keep this discussion separate, but in some ways, whether or not there's a company that is willing to take it in the liquid coffins to repurpose it to be sold as something else affects whether or not we would be able to just put it underwater, because you don't want to just have, put it underwater and then have however many liquid coffins sitting out there at Camp Minden that have nowhere to go. Does that make sense?
It does, and I think that's something we need more understanding on as well. Anyone from the
This is Dr. Bob Flanoy.
Hang on a second. Dr. Lemnicki has his hand up, and then I'll come to you.
Yes. regarding, the residue material that's going to be formed, I also, it's important to remember that the whole process of the destruction of explosives is meant to be performed the way that it minimizes any residue or gas phase pollutants.
Right. So some technologies do, others don't, and that's.
Yes. So this has to be, also taken into the consideration. It's not that we form some residue and we're gonna worry about it later.
Right, and as we see from our table, what residue results from the various technologies is something we're obviously going to be looking at and considering as we do our evaluation. Right. All I'm suggesting here is that the actual technology or process to deal with the residue is probably not something we'll get to within this conversation over the next 2 or 3 weeks. But it's one that has to occur. And I think we can talk about, and certainly members of the dialogue would recommend to the agencies those continuing questions and decisions at which they feel community involvement and dialogue is still required post the conclusion of this part of the dialogue committee on March 11th. Any other thoughts, questions? I had Dr. Flournoy, and then Colonel Stuckey.
Yeah, my question is that, and I direct this to Sam Coleman. It's realizing that the U.S. Army is not on board at the present time. Doesn't EPA have some knowledge and maybe data on M6 removal from somewhere else in the country that you folks have that report in which M6 was disposed of at, whether it's out in New Mexico or Virginia, wherever? Do you all have any data to show that M6 has been disposed of like we have it sitting at the present time in Camp Minden?
We've done some research internally regarding that, and the instances of M6 disposal predominantly involved burning, and there is some data. I'm not sure that it would totally satisfy everyone as folks have formed their opinions in this dialogue committee, but there is some information available where M6 has been burned in the past.
But no other treatment, as Dr. Flournoy, no other treatment other than burning that you're aware of has occurred throughout the United States with EPA being the controlling agency?
Well, so first and foremost, I think that it's important to note that many other environmental agencies are involved in the controlled burning or disposal of explosives, specifically state agencies where they've been delegated by the EPA. And we really rely on those states to control the operations and to collect that information. So the instances where EPA has been directly involved and controlled under a administrative order or some other process is relatively limited. So that's what I was referring to, are those limited situations.
Okay.
And again, this is, I think one of the things that we need to be thinking about as we digest the results of this call is there's a series of questions here. We've already posed a series of questions to ESB and the Army, and I think we'll add some more to our list based on the questions that have come up in this call. So hopefully we can get some additional feedback and knowledge directly from them. Any other comments or questions?
Can we see those questions that you've sent them?
Yeah, basically what we've asked them is as I put back there, can they please join us? Is there a list of approved technologies specifically for M6? And David, there was one other question we posed, wasn't there?
Yes, we asked them for a copy of the December report.
And the December trip, right. So,
excuse me, this is Dolores. Can I ask one question?
Yes, please, go ahead.
I just want to make sure I understood what Sam was saying. What I got out of that is we have never used an alternative method to dispose of M6 across the United States. Am I right? Am I understanding what you said?
No, ma'am, that's not what I was trying to say. And if I said that, I misspoke, and I apologize. I said that the instances where EPA, under some type of an administrative order or agreement, dictated the disposal of M6 are relatively limited. And we know that most of those instances, those limited circumstances, did involve burning. I don't know that there are other alternatives that were considered in other cases where M6 has been disposed of, because there are several states where disposal has been allowed under state authority, and I could not specifically discuss or say what exactly those states do.
I'm not asking about the other states. I'm saying under the purview of EPA and your group, what I'm hearing is that you've never supervised an alternate disposal method of M6. I'm still not hearing it right? Is that no? You didn't
yes,
say
ma'am.
that?
No, ma'am. I'm not saying that. Just keep in mind, I can do some additional research to see what exactly the entire body of EPA knows. I can only speak to some limited research that we've been able to do up to now. So I can't say definitively something has never been done and never been considered. That would be really a overstatement.
Okay,
so
but what you're saying is that you don't know right now if it's been done?
That's correct.
Is there any way to check to see that y'all, with the research capability that you've got, to see?
Sure, we can check.
And this is obviously one of those questions we want to pose directly to the Army.
Right.
They're the people with that knowledge.
Well, they are and they aren't, because don't they have to always go through EPA?
I'll let Sam answer that.
No, ma'am. That's what I've been trying to say. States have the ability to permit a variety of disposal, and I say permit, either permit by issuing a permit, by issuing an order or agreement, or by allowing different disposal methods under state authority. So we do not have, and everyone doesn't come through EPA in order to deal with disposal.
I see. So that information would be scattered among 50 states? If we wanted to know which states have used alternative disposal methods? Is that right?
Well, only the states that have been involved. So I won't say that there have been all 50 states, but there have been more than a few.
This is Dr. Flanoy, Sam. Can't you contact all the region headquarters? There's, 10 regions, I believe, and check and see if any of these regions have knowledge of any other alternative besides burning. Could you do that?
Yes, sir, we can do that.
That would be very good right at this point. In fact, I thought we'd already we already past this point, but if you would check into that, let a lot of us know what we're looking at, what we can look forward to. Thank you.
And we will also pose that question to the Army, because regardless of how many different states are involved, the Army would always have been involved, would be my understanding. So, that is the advantage of them now being at the table.
So then Sam, this is Dr. Flanoy, is going to check with all the other regions and get back to us as to the status of those regions having alternative disposal methods for M6, okay?
He did agree to that, yes.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Any, Slavo, is your hand still up from before, or do you have a new question?
It's from before.
Okay. All right, so I want to move us on to this draft framework, but before we do that, any other just general questions or comments on what we've discussed to this point? All right, so moving on. Again, this is just a draft concept, and the limitations of our technology here, I won't be able to show all of it at once, but I'll scan around so that we can see it. And if you have it on your screen, or if you were able to print it out, you may have better luck simply looking at your materials than on the shared screen here. Basically, what we're trying to do is create a matrix that arrays information and has basic information about all the different technologies that we have on our list at the moment, and whether or not we add more technologies, we'll have to wait and see whether we get additional ones. So if you look down obviously the left-hand column, it basically just says here's the list of technologies. So there were 8 technologies on that new list we got from the ESB that were appropriate to ammunition and explosives. I believe there were 5 or 6 that were shared at the February 12th meeting that we still are trying to understand exactly what list they're on, but they are on our list here. And 2 of those, I believe, are on both lists, which would be the static detonation chamber and the vacuum integrated chamber. So underneath where there's a vendor, a known vendor with a sort of a trade name, that's also identified here, because sometimes you'll hear these things talked about in different ways. For the static detonation chamber, UXB makes a static detonation chamber that's traded under or sold under the DynaSafe name. That doesn't mean they're the only people who do a static detonation chamber, but their name was used at the meeting on the 12th. Under the vacuum integrated chamber, the vendor there is Kobe Steel. The Da Vinci name that you heard at the February 12th meeting is that technology is. So again, at this time, I think we have a dozen total technologies on this list. Some of these are, sorry about that. Some of these are specifically located at Army facilities. For instance, the first 2 on the list, they came from the ammunition and explosives list are at facilities, the hot gas decontamination facilities in Nevada, and the industrial waste process and Cafe Road thermal decontamination areas are in Maryland. We don't have total information on any of these things yet. I'm not suggesting that what we've put in these tables at this point is by any means exhaustive. It obviously isn't. We have a lot of blank spaces. What we're really just trying to do is say, this is the kind of thing we're trying to pull together for folks. So if you look across the top, first we say, what list is it on? We talk about where it is. and then we would talk about could it be moved to be an on-site treatment, and if so, what are the requirements of that? How much physical space would be required at Camp Minden? We'll have a little space here that talks a bit about its how it works, what technology it involves. I'm sorry, I have trouble getting this little arrow to work without moving the whole screen. So the other is that we want to understand to the maximum extent possible, has it been tested or used with M6? Does it have any history? Again, the question that Dolores just asked, has anyone tried to use it with M6? Does it have a background with that? We want to have some information about its destruction efficiency and what kind of outcome you get from this in affecting or destroying the risks involved here. What kind of residue is produced? We just talked about this, and the recycle disposal requirements of that residue. What kind of emissions are produced, and what's possible in terms of monitoring, capturing, and testing those emissions. And finally, what's the capacity of the technology? How much can be treated, whether it's a batch process or a continuous process, and sort of a daily or other kind of way of looking at how many pounds can be treated over what period of time. So this is the basic outline that we have right now to try to begin our conversation. As I said earlier in the call, the hope would be that we would have this populated for preliminary discussion by Wednesday. We're going to have a lot of folks looking at this, a lot of folks providing technical expertise to help fill in these boxes, so that we would begin to be able to have a preliminary understanding of A, this is the range of technologies, alternative technologies that are available to us, and B, here are their basic parameters and what happens when they are used, and what kind of use and where they are, and all those kinds of things I just talked about. So the questions for us now is basically not to start to nitpick what's in these boxes. They're just examples, and what's in these boxes right now, it comes directly from that memo from the DDESB that listed those 8 technologies on the ammunition and explosive list. Our question for us is, as we start to pull this together in a preliminary way to fully populate this, are folks comfortable with this overall format? Does it work for folks? Obviously, this is going to get bigger. We'll have to figure out how to make it as visible and use the right size paper and all that stuff. Is this the right information for our initial screen to start to understand these different technologies, so that list of topics across the top, is that the right list? Would you want to see anything added to that list? And anything else that you want to, for the technical folks to keep in mind as we are filling out this table. So, Frances?
Yes. I have a question. So it's my understanding that M6 is what that means is a specific formula. Sorry?
We can't understand you.
I'm sorry, there was some interference on the line, Frances. Can you repeat, please?
Yes. So it's my understanding the term M6 means a specific formula of 5 different ingredients combined together, and that's what that means. Or 6 ingredients, I can't remember. And so under the column that says history or applicability with M6, I think that if there are similar propellants that have maybe a different proportion of the same ingredients or similar ingredients that these technologies have been tested on before, that would also be useful to know if a specific technology hasn't been tested with M6, but it has been tested with in a propellant that has basically the same ingredients but in different proportions. And then additionally, if there's, some of the ones that dealt with chemical weapons, I understand there were propellants in the chemical weapons. it didn't deal with N6 by itself, maybe, but it dealt with N6 plus a chemical agent or something. So that kind of stuff could be sort of like broadly included, and not just it dealt with pellets of N6, right?
Agreed. And I'm sorry, that is implied, and I will make that more specific. These are cryptic titles, but yes, we're not going to find too many technologies, I don't believe, that have been used directly and specifically with M6, but will have been used with similar types of things.
This is Slavolam Nikki. So
yes.
I have a first question is just organizational, and next I have a more technical question. So was this table actually distributed, because I never got it?
Yes, it was attached to the same email this morning that had the agenda and the summary of last week's meeting.
I didn't get it either. I'm Dr. Bob Flanoy, and I didn't get a copy of the agenda today either.
Did you get the email from me with the call-in number?
No.
No. Mm-mm.
Okay. I'm sorry. I just used the full email list, so let me go back and understand why that didn't happen. My apologies. Anyone else not get the email from me this morning?
Well, I get this is who is it talking?
This is Doug Sarno. I'm sorry.
I got an email from you with the phone number, but the only attachment was the results of technical work group.
Okay, there were three documents attached to that email.
I got those.
So we'll have to figure out why you only got one.
Maybe it got some. If you can resend it, maybe it got cut off or something.
Yeah.
I will resend. Yes. Okay. So it wasn't that you didn't get the email, but somehow you didn't get all three attachments.
Okay. So now the technical question. As briefly, when I look at this headers that you were showing, so I think it's also very important to include in this table if there is any secondary combustion chamber present in the system. Because it doesn't say anything about that. What is the primary fuel that they are using in the systems? And generally, how the residue is being removed.
Okay. Christy, did you get all that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
any other?
There might be later, some more when I look at it in more detail, but these are the first three things that comes to my mind when I look at it.
That's fine. And as always, I will encourage everyone, feel free to contact me, contact Christy with any additional information, questions, thoughts you have. We recognize probably better than anyone how much information and how quickly this whole process is moving. And the thought that everything that occurs to you is going to occur to you just in that 2 hours we're to get on the phone is not likely to happen. So always feel free to have additional.
And another important thing, if it's possible to retrofit these different systems into additional monitoring devices.
Good. Any other input?
Can you explain, is this going to be the full, because we have the full list of criteria, are you going to put that in the chart, or is this kind of just the first kind of preliminary? What's your thought here?
Right now, this is a preliminary analysis. So some of these may go into our more detailed analysis as we look at how this plays out. But it's good that we understand the kinds of questions people will be asking as we do that, because it's not like we're not also going to be trying to compile our detailed information. We don't have enough time to focus on this and then start all over with the more detailed analysis. So as we get information, we will be compiling it. any other thoughts of what you'd like to see in this table to help facilitate our sort of initial analysis and what may end up being our short list evaluation of the various technologies? We want to make sure that we're asking and having enough information here to understand if some technologies, need to just be simply put aside from moving forward into the more detailed list. Slavo, is your hand still up from before, or do you have a new question?
No, it's
okay.
Take it down.
Okay, that's okay. I just don't want to miss anyone. So that's been a whole lot of information in a not so long call. Is everybody comfortable where we are? Recognizing we identified some really important questions that need answers to them as we move forward in the coming days. Any other concerns among the participants of the technical work group about how we're trying to make all this work?
Dr. Bob Flanoy, I think it's very important that we get this U.S. Army group on board ASAP for them to understand that we're working on a short fuse here, and we need to get something going with them to pick their brains and find out what they know, what they can help us with as far as methodologies and so forth. So I think that's very important that they understand that we need them on board these dialogue committees.
We all agree.
And as I understand it, the meeting for tonight, the rally, has been called off. Has that been mentioned?
It hasn't been mentioned. Thank you.
As of 15 minutes ago, it's been called off until next week.
Okay. Wilma, did I hear you a minute ago?
No, but I think it's a really good beginning approach, and I'm just concerned that as you try and fill in all of this, you're going to have difficulty doing it by Wednesday.
I don't disagree. We're going to do our absolute best to move this forward.
Guys, this is
so I understand the schedule. This is Dr. Bob Flanoy. The schedule is there's no meeting tomorrow, whether technical or dialogue. Is that correct?
That's correct. The next meeting of the technical group will be on Wednesday.
Okay, great.
And guys, this is Christy, the other facilitator, and what we did in the AQUA process, which is somewhat similar to this, is we really relied on the expertise of the agencies to take a first cut at filling out this kind of information. So in a perfect world, we have asked the four agencies to try to work together to come up with the best populating this chart as quickly as possible, and to include on each comment, where their citations from, and also, who inserted it. Now, folks are going to have to realize this is a straw man. We're going to work through it. And I remember when we did this at the AQUA process, people were really concerned initially that the AQUA staff were just going to come up with things that made everything look terrible except incineration, because there had been lots of concerns that that's where the Army had been in the past. And as people worked through it and they got an understanding of, the scientific expertise of the group and all, they begin to build trust, and to also see that when they raised comments and asked for things to be changed or citations to better understand something, things changed also. So I know that's going to be a leap of faith for some folks, but I do think it's really the only way to move forward, and asking them to do this by Wednesday is a small miracle, but hopefully we can do as much as possible. And I see we have Rick's hand up.
Go ahead, Rick.
Yes, Chris has rescheduled I think she's reserved the Civic Center for a week from today, which would be March the 3rd. And so she is still trying to, as of about 11 o'clock this morning, she was still trying to touch base with General Honore and make sure that that he would be available on that day, but it's tentatively set up to be a week from tomorrow.
This is Frances, and we have confirmed with General Honore, and it is rescheduled for March 3rd.
Great.
Thanks, guys.
You are all welcome to come, by the way, everybody on the call.
Open invitation. Okay. Any other final comments before I pass it back to David for public comment?
This is.
I want to. Yes,
Hold on, Dr. Flournoy. Hold on one second. Who was the first voice?
Frances.
Oh, go ahead, Frances.
Sam, I have one more question for you. I'm sure you're sick of my questions, but it's the same one from last time, which is, do y'all yet have a draft of the amendment for the AOC that the Army and everybody would need to sign to allow for the selection of an alternate remedy? Has that draft been prepared yet, and can we see it?
I can answer that as best I can. As with many of the legal processes, there is a certain level of confidentiality that the parties request in how they pursue their negotiating position, and that would probably apply here. We are in contact with our lawyers, and we know who the key players are at each agency on the legal side. And I think saying any more, I would probably violate what they've asked me not to say. But it is an issue, it's a concern, and a priority. We know who all the players are, and I think I'll stop there.
Thank you, Sam.
Dr. Flournoy?
Oh, I just wanted to commend you and Christy for your understanding, your patience, and your attention to detail in moving these meetings, conference calls through in a well-organized manner. I think you all have done a splendid job so far.
Well, we appreciate that. Thank you.
And we're watching the calendar every day, too, guys. We're panicked about that sufficiently.
Okay. Any other comments?
Well, it's sleeting in Ruston, Louisiana, pretty heavy right now.
It sounds like an unpleasant weather front, to be sure. I think we're seeing these kinds of things all over the country right now.
Right.
All right, I'm going to pass back to David.
Somebody out of the ditch.
Oh, geez. I'm going to pass it back to David for public comment.
Great. Thank you, everyone. So, operator, if I can ask you to queue up our questions, please.
Absolutely. At this time, I would like to remind everyone, in order to ask a question, please press star, then the number 1 on your telephone keypad. We'll pause for just a moment to compile the Q&A roster. And your first question comes from the line of Alice Bond.
Yes,
Alice,
go ahead.
Your line is open. Miss Alice Bond, your line is open. If your line is on mute, can you please unmute it?
Yes, I'm sorry. I pressed that button about an hour ago for a question, and the question had been answered. So I have no current questions.
Okay, that's great. I'm glad we got your question answered. Are there any?
Again, if you would like to ask a question, please press star 1. And you do have a question from the line of Ron Hagar. Mr. Hagar,
Hello.
your line is open.
Hello, I have a question pertaining to your draft agenda and number 5, the primary and secondary treatment, there has been talk about a possibility that if we can move it, then the full treatment would be done somewhere else. So I think it's a priority as technology, even though you're not looking at the actual the remediation process, to look into the feasibility of transporting underwater in coffins, which is a standard operation, which I understand some of the people interested in doing the full treatment away from Camp Minden are interested in. That seems to me to be a really important one that may be neglected based on this primary versus secondary treatment statement.
I agree. We have to get that question answered. Absolutely.
Thank you.
And our final question comes from the line of Melissa Downer.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
I was just wondering, is there a technical person from the EPA on the committee?
Yes, ma'am. That is Sam, who's spoken up quite a bit, and then he heads up the team of technical folks who also are listening in.
Okay, great. I joined in late, so I must have missed that. I apologize. Thank you very much.
Great. So that's our last question.
And there are no further questions.
Great. Will you wrap us up, operator?
Absolutely. This concludes today's conference call, and you may now disconnect your lines.